Good afternoon. How's everybody doing this afternoon? Today, I want to talk to you about teaching um, social skills to ASD students. So, in my research, I started out with Dr. Scott Bellini's um, 5 step model, and I'm going to go through the 5 steps with you. Then I'm going to um, tell you a little bit about some of the strategies that I researched, and then I'm going to tell you what I concluded about what the best one or ones are that I feel like will benefit the most students and have the most long-term effects. So just bear with me, and we'll go through this, and I'm hoping that it will be something that you're interested in. I found it very interesting, and maybe you'll have something to add. I appreciate you coming to hear me today. Thank you. I started my research, of course, as I said, with Dr. Bellini's article. The article is called Making and Keeping Friends, a um, model for social skills instruction. So um, that was the what I used basically as the start of my research. And the research I did was to determine if, or basically what intervention method works best for the most students, for your ASD students. So basically, trying to determine one over the others that I feel like would be most beneficial to all of the students. Of course, taking into consideration that there may need to be some alterations or modifications from time to time depending on your students and their skill set, but basically using that as your foundation. So, again, the 5 step model that I looked at started out with Dr. Bellini's journal article. And this first step in that is assessing social functioning. And basically, what that means is that you're going to have to take a look at your students, take a look at the quantitative data, take a look at the um, progress monitoring that has been done up to that point, any other observations or anything else that might be used to help you to determine what level your student is right now and what skills they need to work on. So that's number one. Then number two is going to be distinguishing between something called skills acquisition and performance deficits. So basically, you have some students that may have skills acquisitions problems, which means that they really haven't learned that skill yet, so they need to be taught it. And then the ones that have performance deficits, their problem may possibly be that they have the skill, but there's something going on with them that is keeping them from performing that skill the way that it needs to be performed. So we need to look at that and distinguish between the two. And that's number two. And then the third step in the model is selecting the intervention strategies. And of course, this means you're going to kind of do what I did, is do some research and kind of look and see which, or maybe you've already done the research, and you're going to see which strategy you feel like works the best for your students and the skills that they need to work on. So in this case, I did some research into some different ones, and I will go over those with you in a few minutes. That's number three in his 5 step model. Then we go to number four. And of course, number four is actually implementing. After you've already decided which one is going to be the best one, now you're going to implement it and see how well it benefits your students. And then, of course, number five, once you've implemented it, of course, the only way you're going to know how effective it is you're going to have to do some evaluating. So you're going to make some assessments and do some progress monitoring and just kind of see what effect this type of this intervention strategy has on your students. And it's at this time that you can take a look and see if there's something you may need to modify, or If not modify it for the whole group, you may need to modify it for some students. Some students may require a little bit more direct teaching than others. So just, again, nothing is foolproof across the board, but again, looking for a foundation. Okay, so now that we have looked at the 5 steps in Dr. Bellini's model, we're going to look at the strategies that I researched. The first one I want to talk about has to do with early intervention. And this basically is identifying students at an early age, usually between age 2 and 5, when they're in preschool to kindergarten, and kind of trying to determine if there are some skills that they have a deficit in or some sort of dysfunction that we need to be targeting. And there's, several, there's a lot of different interventions. Some of them I looked at involved using other students and asking them to come and ask the student to play or to involve them in their conversation, or maybe it's the student and the teacher maybe going over certain things, maybe learning colors or learning shapes or that kind of thing, and that the teacher is leading the student so that the student has some sense of the feeling of success, so that it makes them want to continue to have that success, and will motivate them to try harder each time that you do that with them. So that's early intervention. Then the next one I looked at was considering quantitative data. And basically what that is you're going to use the test data that you have collected from their records, and just kind of, whatever tests they've taken, you're going to take that information, you're going to use that and determine, based on that information, what course of action you need to take and what direction you need to take your intervention in, basically what strategy to use. Okay, this basically heavily relies strictly on quantitative data. The next one I use is group-based therapy, and of course this involves breaking students up into groups, and maybe having one group use behavior analysis and another group not, or using feedback or just observation. So you can take that in a lot of different directions. There's also some that do immediate intervention, and basically what that is just means that you're going to intervene immediately upon the targeted behavior, when the targeted behavior is being exhibited, so that you're letting that student know immediately that behavior is unacceptable. Or another way that I looked at was to basically teach the skill right before you send students out to recess or to PE, or to participate in some type of activity in the classroom that requires them to interact amongst one another, so that you can observe and do some progress monitoring to see if they take that skill directly from being just taught it into that other environment that they're now moving on into. So those are a lot of different or several different ways to look at group-based therapy, so that I looked at in my research. The next one I looked at was drama therapy, and I thought this was very interesting because it used scenarios that you could either give the students, or that you could give them some suggestion of that included a skill that you want them to work on, and then they would go and perform that scenario or create it based on the idea that you gave them. And this gave them some sort of autonomy, so that basically they're kind of, they're taking direction from you as far as what they're supposed to be working on, but yet they're kind of putting their own personality into it as well. And this kind of working out a drama situation where the teacher can intervene if necessary, but if not, it gives them the opportunity to perform that skill on their own, and that I feel like that kind of helps them as far as with their self-esteem. The next one is movement therapy, and that one is similar to me to drama therapy, except for it involves more movement than it does verbal conversation. And I feel like this is a really good one for your students who are nonverbal because it doesn't put a lot of pressure on them to speak, but they're using their movement. But where it could be dance, it could be exercise, or it could be some other just movement, maybe of the arms, movement of the legs, or the head. Could be where one student does a movement, and then the other student is required to respond with some other movement, and that they are learning the cues from one another. That what one movement means, what one move making one movement means that the other one makes another movement of some sort, or what movement that may be. And again, it has a lot of. I feel like this one has a lot of autonomy in it, whereas it allows the students to kind of have the opportunity to be themselves and put their own personalities into it. And then the last one I looked at was in of these uh, was one that was it was a guide basically for adolescents. And as we all know, students when they get to the age of adolescence and the secondary grades, socialization becomes more important. And these students, these ASD students, they want to be able to interact and have relationships and make friends and maintain friends just like all the other students do. So we just imagine that a lot of adolescents have trouble at that age anyway. It's just a really critical age when they are trying to um, navigate themselves between childhood and adulthood. And if if our general education students struggle with that, just imagine how much more our ASD students are going to struggle with that without help. So I feel like this guide was really good because it kind of gave them some dialogue scenarios. It kind of gives them a law to kind of keep track of themselves and like what they're saying, and kind of evaluating themselves to determine what is appropriate and what's not. And just kind of helps them to give them a chance to think before they speak, and just kind of gives them a little support in helping them to learn how to build those relationships. So those are the ones I looked at outside of Dr. Bellini's work. I also looked at video um, modeling and video self-modeling, which was under Dr. Bellini's work. Video modeling, of course, is looking at having the students look at videos of peers who are performing the skills that we want our students to perform. And then we ask them to replicate those skills once they've watched those videos. And then the video self-modeling, that entails the students actually that we're going to videotape them, and then we're going to play that back for them and let them watch themselves. And that way, they're going to see themselves being successful. So basically, we're just going to catch them doing the right thing, behaving in the right way. And then we're going to take that and play it back for them and have them watching themselves being successful at it. And I feel like that gives them some motivation, some self-confidence, encourages them to continue to want to do that appropriate behavior, to perform that appropriate behavior. So I feel like in the course of my study and the research that I did, that's the one I really, really liked the most. And I felt like that it's the one that is going to stick with them the most. And I know that there may need to be some type of modifications for some students. Everybody's not going to fit into a perfect mold or cookie cutter, but I feel like it's a good foundation to start with. I really like the fact that when you videotape the student, they're being themselves, that you're not giving them a script, you're not expecting them to fit into any particular mold, you're just trying to get them to use a skill and learn a skill so that they can use it consistently that is appropriate in their social interaction. So I feel like that although a lot of these strategies are good, the video self modeling I feel like stood out to me as the best. Although some of the others, the drama therapy and the movement therapy and the even the video modeling um, come in close, um, just because they allow the students to be themselves and they allow for the most natural behavior, the most natural interaction. I really learned a lot from this research, and I hope that me sharing this with you, if it maybe gives you interest to look into some of these different strategies yourself. But I really think that this research was beneficial. It really taught me a lot, and plan on looking into into it some more. And so I thank you for coming and listening to me, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I will see you all next time. Thank you so much.